That's why Melanie wants the land so badly, Allison whispered. It's not just about houses. She's planning to sell the mineral rights to Excelsior Energy for $50 million once she has full control. That night, I built a detailed timeline of Melanie's fraud. The pattern was obvious, but patterns don't win court cases. I needed evidence. And ideally, Melanie to incriminate herself. Then it hit me. Allison, how do you feel about playing double agent? She raised an eyebrow. What's the play? I laid it out. She'd pretend she wanted her job back, claiming she could handle the Brian Jordan problem. Meanwhile, I'd play the naive heir ready to settle cheap. The next evening, the HOA meeting was held in the lavish community center my land had paid for. The room was packed with angry residents. Melanie stood at the podium, flawless in her power suit. Thank you for coming on short notice, she began smoothly. As you know, we have a situation with Mr. Brian Jordan's ownership claims. She gestured at me. While we sympathize with his confusion, the development was built legally and in good faith. I stood, feigning nervousness. I just want what's fair, I said, letting my voice tremble. My aunt left me this land. I don't want to evict families, but surely I deserve some compensation. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Melanie smiled sweetly. Of course. We're prepared to offer $200,000 for any residual claims. That's generous, considering everything was approved properly. 200,000, I repeated, pretending to consider. This land's worth at least $5 million. Her smile tightened. Was worth it, Mr. Jordan. The situation has changed. Jim Harrison rose from the front row, tan and smug. Look, buddy, he said, voice oily. Take the deal or spend the next 10 years in court. I let the silence linger, then held up my phone. Before I decide, there's something everyone should hear. I pressed play. Melanie's voice filled the room. Of course I knew the old bat was dead. That's why I sent the notices there. Brian Jordan was in London. By the time he figured it out, we'd have everything locked down tight. Chaos erupted. Residents shouted questions. Melanie went pale. That's out of context, she snapped. I raised my voice over the uproar. I also have the real environmental reports, the ones showing contamination levels triple the legal limit. The ones you hid from these homeowners. Now the crowd was furious. Jim tried to sneak out, but my old neighbor Connell blocked the exit. Not so fast, Jim. We all need to hear this. Melanie tried to regain control. This is fabricated. I'll file defamation charges tomorrow. But the doubt was spreading fast. I pulled out more papers. Did you all know HOA funds have been used to pay Melanie's personal legal bills? Or that the construction company building your homes declared bankruptcy, twice, under different names? The room exploded in outrage. Melanie fled toward her office, Jim on her heels. Residents surrounded me, desperate for answers. How deep does this go? A young father asked. Are our homes safe? Your homes are sound, I said carefully. But there are issues that need fixing. My fight isn't with you, it's with the people who defrauded us all. That night, Allison called. Melanie's panicking, moving money offshore, shredding files. She just called someone she called the senator. Said things are getting out of control. I smiled grimly. Good. Perfect people make perfect mistakes. What about our federal friends? The FBI agent you contacted? He's very interested, Allison said. They've been investigating Jim Harrison for laundering money, but couldn't tie him to Melanie, until now. Moments later, an anonymous email hit my inbox. Back off, or things will get unpleasant. You don't know who you're dealing with. Attached was a photo of my house in Boston. I forwarded it to the FBI and texted Allison. Looks like we're rattling the right cages. She replied instantly. Melanie just offered me $1 million to steal your evidence and vanish. Want me to take it? I laughed. Absolutely. Let's see how she pays you. The next morning, everything unraveled. Melanie filed an emergency injunction to silence me, but in her haste, she attached financial documents that actually confirmed my claims. In court, her jittery lawyer, Kevin Marsh, fumbled as Judge Patricia Reeves scanned the files. "Counselor, did you even read these attachments?" she asked sharply. "Your Honor, we filed under time pressure. My client wanted to protect the community." "From what?" Reeves cut him off. "From learning the truth. These statements show offshore transfers from HOA accounts. You realize that's perjury if falsified?" Melanie frantically whispered to her senior attorney, Richard Blackstone, the shark of Arizona real estate law. He stood smoothly. "Your Honor, there's a misunderstanding." Judge Reeves' tone was ice. "Mr. Blackstone, misunderstanding or not, these are now public record. They show clear evidence of fraud. This court is referring the matter for criminal investigation." Meanwhile, Melanie had already sold 80 of the 120 homes to unsuspecting buyers. She leaned in. That's why Melanie wants the land, not the houses. She plans to sell the mineral rights to Excelsior Energy for $50 million once she controls everything. Instead of trying to stop her, I let Melanie rush the closings. Every sale created another victim and another messy paper trail. Each hurried closing meant more sloppy paperwork and more evidence. Allison fed me inside info while pretending to help Melanie cover tracks. That afternoon I went to the county recorder with Patricia Nguyen, a forensic auditor who'd worked with the FBI. As we scanned the deeds, Patricia whistled. "Brian, this is worse than we thought. Look at these signatures." The same notary stamped everything, except her license had expired 3 years earlier. All the closings happened within 72 hours. No legitimate operation moves that fast without cutting corners. Patricia nodded. "This is fraudulent conveyance. She's creating a maze of transactions so it's impossible to unwind, but she did it so sloppily it's creating proof." Later, at a truck stop meeting, Allison handed me a flash drive. "She's pushing buyers to close without inspections, offering cash discounts, forging disclosure signatures," she said. The drive contained emails where Melanie told Jim to use substandard materials. She also slid me a folder labeled Confidential, Project Clean Sweep, plans to condemn the original section, where my aunt's house stood, blame contamination, and redevelop it into a luxury resort. She'd be using pollution as a pretext to force sales and profit from redevelopment. Allison added bitterly, "She's been paying off environmental inspectors with HOA funds." The corruption ran deeper than I'd imagined. I spent the day tracing money through shell companies and offshore accounts. By nightfall, I'd mapped ties to 3 city council members, 2 state legislators, and a federal judge. Networks have weak links. Then Special Agent David Chen of the FBI called. 2 hours later I was in a bland office staring at a wall of photos and a spiderweb of documents. Melanie and Jim at the center. "We've been following Harrison for 18 months, Chen said. But Ross was untouchable, until now." He pointed to a photo, Senator William Thornton. "We believe he's providing cover for them." Chen laid out a risky plan. I would meet Melanie wired and offer to settle, baiting her into admitting the scheme. "She's clever," he warned. "Make her think she's winning." Thursday night nearly ruined it. Jim confronted Allison in the HOA office, accused her of spying, and grabbed her. What he didn't know, Allison recorded everything. His threats, his admission they'd handled problems like mine before, and his boast that the senator would bury any trouble. Allison escaped straight to the FBI. By Friday morning Jim had vanished with $5 million from the HOA accounts. Melanie went from confident to frantic, desperate, and therefore sloppy. I walked into her office wearing a wire. Her veneer was gone. "What do you want, Jordan?" she snarled. "I want to end this," I said. "You've sold most of the houses. Take $10 million and I'll sign whatever you need." She blinked, calculating. $5 million, she countered. "And an NDA." I pretended to bargain. $8 million, cash tonight. Cash meant no paper trail. Maybe the missing HOA money Jim took. Her face emptied. "How do you know?" she hissed, then realized she'd slipped. "Tonight. 10 p.m. Old warehouse on Route 47. "Come alone," she said finally. News of missing HOA funds spread like wildfire. By Saturday, residents packed the community center in panic. I called the meeting, this time to organize them. "I know you're scared," I began. You've invested your lives in these homes. I'm not fighting you, I'm fighting those who defrauded us. Murmurs of agreement. If you'll testify about irregularities, missing inspections, forged forms, unusual pressure to close, we can build a case that protects your homes and brings them justice, I told them, watching faces harden into resolve. Pressure to close quickly, missing inspections, strange fees. If you testify, I'll make sure your ownership is protected, I told the crowd. Any damages awarded will fund environmental repairs and safeguard your property values. The response was overwhelming. 90% of homeowners agreed to cooperate. Stories poured out, forged documents, threats, bribes. One elderly couple revealed Melanie had convinced them to invest their retirement savings in a fake HOA fund promising 15% returns. Another family discovered their inspection report had been filed before their house was even built. Every account added another brick to the wall of evidence. That evening, while I prepared for the warehouse meeting, my phone rang. "Change of plans," Melanie said tensely. "I'll have someone deliver the money to your hotel." She sounded afraid. I kept my tone cold. "No deal. Face to face, or everything goes public tomorrow." A long silence, then, "Fine. But I'm bringing security." I smiled. "Bring whoever you want. Just bring my money." The warehouse was cavernous and empty, perfect for a sting. I arrived early, scouting exits and checking my wire. The FBI had wanted to bug the place, but I convinced them to stay back. Melanie would run at the first hint of law enforcement. At exactly 10 p.m., headlights sliced through the darkness. Melanie entered with 2 massive bodyguards, hauling a heavy duffel bag. "8 million, she said flatly, dropping it at my feet. "Count it." I unzipped it, stacks of hundreds. "Looks right," I said. "Now about that NDA." She handed me a document. "Sign it, take your money, and disappear. If you ever breathe a word, you'll what?" I cut in. "Have me killed like you did Thomas Brennan?" Her face drained of color. Brennan had been a journalist investigating HOA corruption before his accident. "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, but her guards looked uneasy. "Really?" I said, showing her a photo on my phone. "Because I have an email where you discuss permanently solving the Brennan problem with someone named Victor." Everything happened at once. One guard reached for his gun, and the warehouse doors exploded open. FBI agents stormed in. Melanie screamed and tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. As they cuffed her, she spat, "You set me up. You'll pay for this." "Actually," I said, "you're the one who'll pay. The money's marked. Those serial numbers match the HOA withdrawals." As she was led away, Melanie shouted over her shoulder, "You don't understand. This is bigger than me. They'll come after you." I watched the FBI vehicles disappear into the night, wondering who they were. But that was for another day. Tonight, justice had landed. By morning, the news had exploded. 3 city council members resigned, and Senator Thornton's office issued a denial of any involvement, predictable. The federal courthouse overflowed for Melanie's hearing. She faced 37 counts: fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, racketeering. Jim Harrison had been caught at the Mexican border with a fake passport and quickly turned state's witness. The bombshell: prosecutors were investigating a sitting U.S. senator. When I took the stand, Melanie's attorney, Richard Blackstone, Arizona's notorious shark, circled me with a smooth smile. "Mr. Jordan, isn't it true you have a personal vendetta? That this is just an elaborate extortion attempt?" "No, counselor," I said evenly. "I exposed a criminal enterprise that stole millions from innocent people. The only extortion here was by your client." Blackstone pressed on. "You wore a wire and pretended to accept a bribe. Isn't that entrapment?" The prosecutor stood. "Objection, Your Honor. The defendant initiated the bribe attempt." Sustained. Blackstone tried to paint me as manipulative, but his attacks only opened the door for more evidence. Then I delivered the key argument. "Your Honor, I refer to Whitmore versus Henderson, 1896. The court ruled that any structure built on private land without consent belongs to the landowner. This was reaffirmed in Morrison versus State, 1952, and Consolidated Developers versus Williams, 1998. Furthermore, Arizona Statute 42-173 states that improvements made in bad faith or through fraud are forfeited. Blackstone scoffed. Those laws are outdated. Judge Carter leaned forward. Actually, Counselor, Whitmore versus Henderson was cited just last year in Peterson versus Maricopa County. Proceed, Mr. Jordan. I smiled faintly. Thank you, Your Honor. Combining those precedents with the evidence of fraud, we can prove that not only did Ms. Ross commit criminal acts, but she had also, unknowingly, transferred ownership of all improvements, all 120 homes, to me, the rightful landowner. The prosecution looked stunned. Even Allison blinked in surprise, though we'd planned this move. Blackstone flushed crimson. This is absurd. You can't claim my client built 120 homes only to lose them on a technicality. It's not a technicality, I replied. It's the law, the same law your client tried to twist for profit. Melanie gripped Blackstone's arm, hissing loud enough for the court reporter. Do something. Call the senator. If I go down, I'm taking everyone with me. The judge slammed her gavel. Order. Ms. Ross, no threats in my courtroom. But the damage was done. Within hours, FBI agents raided Senator Thornton's office. The next phase centered on environmental fraud. I showed evidence that Melanie bribed inspectors to ignore toxic contamination, making the land unfit for housing without massive cleanup. The irony, I told the court, is that in chasing profit, Ms. Ross made herself personally liable under federal environmental law to the tune of $30 million. Blackstone tried one final plea. Even if we accept Mr. Jordan's interpretation, surely the innocent homeowners deserve protection. It was the moment I'd waited for. Agreed. I'll sell each home back to its occupant at their original price, minus fraudulent fees. All profits will fund cleanup and restitution. Judge Carter nodded. A fair and creative solution, Mr. Jordan. Ms. West, does your client support this? Allison rose, composed and confident. We do, Your Honor. My client seeks justice, not personal gain. The prosecutor added, No objection, Your Honor. This framework could guide future HOA fraud cases. Melanie suddenly stood, knocking over her chair. This is a setup. The senator promised me protection. Her outburst sealed her fate. The judge ordered her removed and revoked bail. As calm returned, I revealed my final exhibit, a chart mapping $47 million laundered through shell companies over 5 years. The courtroom fell silent. After a brief recess, the judge ruled, Given the overwhelming evidence and Ms. Ross's own admissions, I grant the plaintiff's motion and approve the restitution framework. Outside, Allison smiled. That was brilliant. How long have you planned this? Since I discovered Whitmore versus Henderson. Sometimes the best trap is the one your enemy builds for themselves. That evening, the news showed Melanie in handcuffs, shouting about conspiracies. The headline read, HOA President's Greed Becomes Her Prison, Landmark Case Sets Precedent. 3 months later, at sentencing, the judge's tone was severe. Ms. Ross, you betrayed families, corrupted officials, and showed no decency. You're sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without parole. As the gavel fell, I thought of Aunt Margaret. Her plan had worked perfectly. The sweetest revenge wasn't wealth. It was turning their own weapon against them. 6 months later, the aftermath unfolded like clockwork. Melanie served 25 years. In court, she admitted, voice trembling, greed blinded me. I destroyed families. I can't undo it, but I'll help expose others. Her cooperation dismantled a fraud network across 12 states and over 200 officials. Jim Harrison received 15 years for his cooperation, recovering $30 million in stolen funds. Then came the real shock, Senator Thornton's trial. Once powerful, now disgraced, he faced life in prison, the ultimate fall from grace. As for the homes, I sold each back to its owner at cost, minus fraud. Cleanup funds came from seized assets. When natural gas was later discovered, I'd already placed mineral rights into a community trust funding schools and environmental programs for 50 years. Connell Lewis, once a victim, became the new HOA president. His first act, rewrite the bylaws for full transparency and supermajority approval on major decisions. Never again, he said over coffee. The residents transformed, suspicion replaced by unity. Block parties took the place of HOA meetings, and a community garden bloomed where Melanie's office once stood. Allison West's career skyrocketed. The young lawyer once blacklisted had become the go-to expert on property fraud. Allison opened her own firm defending homeowners from predatory HOAs and corrupt developers. Within a year, she had offices in 3 states and a waiting list of clients. "I owe it all to your aunt," she told me. "She saw something in me worth saving." We'd found more of Aunt Margaret's letters hidden in the property, years of meticulous notes documenting Melanie's crimes, building a case she knew she'd never see completed. Former Judge Harold Winter's testimony opened another Pandora's box. His detailed account of judicial corruption triggered a massive DOJ investigation. 17 judges across 6 states were indicted, hundreds of wrongful foreclosures overturned. Winter died peacefully 3 months later, finally at peace with his conscience. His funeral drew dozens of families he'd helped redeem. The ripple effects grew. States began passing new laws protecting property owners from HOA abuse. The Jordan Amendment required verified notice before any HOA could alter property rights. Law schools introduced courses on HOA governance and fraud. The Emerald Heights case became required reading in ethics classes, a warning about how power and greed can rot entire systems. On the anniversary of Melanie's arrest, I stood at the community center addressing residents, officials, and press. "This victory belongs to all of us," I said, looking over familiar faces. To everyone who stood up, spoke out, and refused to let corruption win. To my Aunt Margaret, who saw this coming and prepared the ground for justice. And to this community, which chose unity over fear. After the speeches, people laughed and shared stories. I wandered to where my aunt's wildflower field once bloomed. Now it was a playground filled with children's laughter and parents at ease. No more secret fees or threats of foreclosure. Connell approached, handing me a cold beer. "You know, Brian, when you first showed up, some of us thought you were the enemy. Now look at this place." He gestured toward the vibrant neighborhood. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well. As the sun set over Emerald Heights, I thought about the journey, from that first shocking morning to this quiet moment of peace. The accountant in me admired the balance of justice served. The human in me took deeper comfort in the community reborn from corruption's ashes. A breeze whispered through the trees, and I could almost hear Aunt Margaret's voice. "Well done, Brian. Well done indeed." The wildflowers were gone, but something better had taken root. A community built on trust, transparency, and the belief that justice, though delayed, always prevails. Melanie had been right about one thing. She had fallen into a trap. But it wasn't mine. It was her own, brick by brick, forged with every lie, every forged signature, every family she tried to ruin. The laws she twisted finally snapped back, delivering poetic justice, the kind where the good guys win, the bad guys pay, and neighbors discover they're stronger together than any corrupt system. Sometimes the best revenge isn't punishment, it's turning greed into growth, and fear into freedom. And if you're watching from a place where HOA horror stories still thrive, remember, document everything, question authority, and never underestimate the power of ordinary people united against injustice. Because this story isn't just my victory.